Welcome to the last session of today, how to find the right blockchain solution for your use case. My name is Armin Reiter. I have a technical background from cybersecurity to software engineering. I am CIO at CRYPTIX and managing director at CrypTIX Labs, where we research blockchain and distributed ledger technologies, and where we build products on blockchain and distributed ledger technologies. And we build those for our customers, but also for our own ventures. Because CryptIX is a venture building company, and if you think about doing a blockchain project, you have a lot of things that you need to think about. So you have a token, for example, you need to do legal evaluations, you need to do the product design, you need to do the technology part, software engineering, but also security is a very important part, right? Because, I mean, we are dealing with money, and yeah, it's really important to also take care of that. You have the whole compliance part. You want to support your customers, and we at CryptIX, we combine all those services into one company to really deliver great projects and products to our customers. If we do such ventures, then we always do it with our group vision in mind, which is to build the people's financial marketplace. So we want to combine different services that you need or that you want into one marketplace. And just think about, you wake up in the morning, you go down to the bakery, someone you know since many years, and you want to pay with a cryptocurrency, right? And you want to get cash back, you want to get rewards, you want to have a loyalty program. And your merchants, so all the merchants, they want to accept cryptocurrencies. And if they expand their businesses, then they maybe need to finance it. So you want to do some crowdfunding, and the merchant can do that, do a crowdfunding campaign, again with cryptocurrencies, and you have your wallet, and you can invest into that. So you will have a security token in the wallet, and if the company is successful, then you will get dividends, and that's again into your wallet. So everything is like connected together. CryptIX was founded 2017. We have about 65 employees, and we already built multiple ventures, and I would like to quickly show you a few of the projects we had. So on the right side, we can see BlockTrade. BlockTrade is a cryptocurrency exchange, so you can buy and sell Bitcoin, Ethereum, e-credits, and other cryptocurrencies. Then in the middle, we have e-credits. E-credits is the people's currency. It's an own blockchain, it's an own mainnet, and there are a few innovative concepts built into the e-credits. So one is the organizational structure. I'm not sure if you are aware of what is a European Cooperative Society. So that's an organization where people can really participate, where you have a legal body, where you can also get financial market licenses. And we are basically the first crypto company that built an SCE. Our most recent venture is Equito. Equito just got a MiFID II brokerage license, so they can build an all-in-one investment platform where retail investors and institutional investors can buy stocks, bonds, ETFs, can invest into startups, and yeah, I mean, that's a great service for small and medium-sized enterprises. If they want to finance their startup, then Equito is the right company to approach. We not just do ventures ourselves, but we also do blockchain projects for our customers. And today I would like to talk about how to find the right blockchain solution for your use case. So you have a use case, you want to use blockchains, but how do you find the right one? And I will refer always to 3 use cases that I have in mind. So the first is someone wants to build a payment token on Ethereum. Is this a good idea, or should we probably go for another solution? The second use case is PGP certificates on the blockchain. So you can use PGP to encrypt data, and there are many reasons from a security perspective and so on why it makes sense to have it on the blockchain. And you think about to build your own blockchain for those certificates. And is this the right approach, or should we probably use something else? The third use case I will talk about is you are a metaverse startup. You are very great in virtual reality, in creating gaming experiences. And you think about to take a blockchain, an existing source code, and launch your own blockchain to have different assets on the blockchain and tradable, which are also in the metaverse, so in your universe. When customers approach us, there is, in the beginning, always one first question that is really important. And it's, do you really need a blockchain? So is it really a blockchain use case? And especially if there are big corporations, they have their supply chain, they heard of this Web3 thing and blockchain stuff, and they want to do something and think about, okay, let's take the supply chain and let's do it on blockchain. But does it really make sense? And there is a website which tries to answer this question. So do you need a blockchain.com? And the answer is most probably no. And it's not that easy, but this website is based on a paper that was launched 5 years ago. And it asks a few questions that help you to find out if it's really a blockchain use case. If we look at the third question here, so can you use an always online trusted third party? Maybe the answer is yes, you can. But we are in the crypto space. We want decentralization. We want to give the power to the people. So yes, you can, but we don't want to, right? And let's assume you really evaluated your use case. You know, yes, blockchain is the right technology for it. Then the next question is how to find the right blockchain solution. And as usual in the software engineering, you should at first think about the design and go through a few questions. And I will show you a few design considerations. And the first thing I will talk about is the blockchain trilemma. That's what we already saw today from the Cardano Foundation. And it basically says there are 3 properties: scalability, decentralization, and security. And you can have 2 of them, but not all 3. Let's just think about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the most decentralized blockchain. It's the most secure blockchain, but the scalability is not that good. If you want to have a super high scalability, then there is basically a very simple solution for it. You take a very strong server, or 3, put them in your basement, connect them with a very strong cable, and then you just create blocks that are 1 gigabyte size. You can put 1 million transactions in this block, but you basically have absolutely no decentralization. So think about those things, and if we go back to those use cases that I mentioned. So the first one was a payment token on Ethereum. What do you want if you build up a payment network? You need scalability, right? If you want to replace Visa, you want to have a lot of transactions. If you build your payment token to buy art, and you only have 5 transactions every 5 minutes, whatever, then scalability doesn't matter that much. So think about those things. And in the case of the PGP certificates, decentralization and security is very important. Why? As I said, PGP certificates are used to encrypt stuff, and you want to have a very high level of censorship resistance. And you get censorship resistance by having a very high level of decentralization. And the scalability in that case doesn't matter that much, because you will anyhow just have 1 certificate, so basically 1 transaction created every few seconds. If you thought about those things, so that's just the starting point, then there are a lot of other properties and things you should think about. And we collected them in this mind map. And on the upper right side, we can see the blockchain trilemma that we just talked about. And then we have some general properties. Censorship resistance is something I already talked about. Then we have public availability. So we know there are permission blockchains and permissionless blockchains. There are public and private and consortium blockchains. So just think about what you want to do. If you're a big corporation and you want to have your supply chain with 5 other companies, consortium blockchain is fine. You don't need to have a public blockchain, right? Then we have governance. Also something you should think about. Do you need governance functions? Do you need voting? maybe it doesn't matter for you. And that's very important for this whole list. It's not a comprehensive list, so it doesn't contain everything, but it contains lots of things that are very useful, and maybe for your use case, you want to answer them. You don't need to answer all of them, but it's very good to go through it. Another property is privacy. So many people think that the data on the blockchain is stored encrypted. So that's not true. It's there in plain text. And this can be an issue if you have something that is really privacy relevant. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe you're fine with pseudonymous transactions and that's it. Data storage, so just think about where do you want to store your data. Should it be on the blockchain? Should it be on the interplanetary file system? Can it be in your company or on some cloud storage, whatever? Then we have blockchain and transactions. So a few properties that are around blockchain and transaction speed. And block time is, we know for Bitcoin we have a block time in average of 10 minutes. If you think about our payment token on Ethereum, so we want to do payments. And if you have a block time of 10 minutes, then it basically means you go to the store, you buy something, and then you wait until the first block is mined, right? And we know that we should wait for 6 confirmations. So you are at the merchant, and you wait an hour until your transaction is really final on the blockchain. In such a case, you want to have a very low block time, so for example, 5 seconds. In other scenarios, like the PGP certificates, you are fine with having 10 minutes, 15 minutes. You just need to make sure that within 1 or 2 hours, the certificates are published, but it doesn't need to be super fast. The block size is probably also an important property for you. So, you can configure some chains, you can change the block size. And if you think about an IoT use case, in IoT you have a lot of small transactions. So maybe you want to have a small block size and at the same time a small block time. For other use cases, you want to have a bigger block size. The time to finality is basically the property that says when you commit a transaction, the time to finality is when it is 99.9% sure that the transaction is added to the blockchain and that no reorg can kick it out or something like that. And we know for Bitcoin, for Ethereum, it's basically 6 blocks, but we recently saw a reorg on the Ethereum blockchain of 7 blocks, so now we need to wait for 7 blocks on Ethereum. Another property here is the consensus algorithm. You don't need to understand every consensus algorithm, but different consensus algorithms have different properties. And we know at the European Union there is this discussion to ban proof of work because it's environmental, unfriendly, and so on. And there is a reason why the Bitcoiners want to have proof of work. They don't want to destroy the environment. They do everything to use green energy for the mining. But we know that proof of work is the most secure consensus algorithm still today. And Bitcoiners, they don't want to make a compromise in security. They want to have the best solution. If you think about your use cases, then if security is very important, maybe proof of work is the right one to go. And in this list, we also have the mining rewards. So that could be something that is important for you, because if you want that people can participate in your network and they should get rewards, then you want to define your consensus algorithm and you want to define the rewards. On the left side, we have issue-owned cryptocurrency. So I regularly hear from people it's taken an hour to create a cryptocurrency, right? But, what does it bring? I can also take a piece of paper and write 20 Armin coins on it, and what then? What happens, right? And if you issue your own cryptocurrency, you need to think about the token echo. So for a payment token, you need to make sure that you don't have too less and also not too much. So if there are just 20 million tokens, for example, and you want to build a global payment network which should replace Visa, then sooner or later, one coffee will cost 0.000 something. So that's not really user-friendly. Another important thing here is the legal definition. So we know there are security tokens, utility tokens, and payment tokens. And if you have a security token, then the legal evaluations will take much longer, and you have a lot of compliance stuff you need to think about. If it's a utility token, then it's much easier. But if you look at the next thing, exchange listing, so this takes time. If you build your own blockchain and you want to list the token or your coin on an exchange, then it will take up to a year, maybe even longer. And this is something you need to think about if it's really worth to create your own cryptocurrency, or maybe you use something existing. And if the cryptocurrency is there, I mean, you also need to sell it. You need to convince the people. If you look at CoinMarketCap, there are 20,000 cryptocurrencies listed there. So they are not waiting for you for the 20,001st cryptocurrency. So just think about if it's needed or not. It could definitely make sense, but you just need to define it for yourself. Then we have the cost and effort perspective. Sometimes people just think about the development, so how long does it take to implement the product, but you also need to operate it, you need to maintain it, you need to do all those legal stuff, you need to make sure that the compliance is fine. And the last point is very important, resources. So developers are very rare, especially in the blockchain space. And if you build something super fancy, then it's even harder to find developers. And I talked to a few partners, and they told me they are looking for developers, and they train them that they are able to do the stuff, and it takes a year. And after this year, the people can really start to work on the things. And finally, we have the ecosystem and the tools. So if you use, for example, Ethereum or Cardano, then you have a really great ecosystem. There is a community, you have documentation available, you have open source software, it's easy to extend it, and it's integrated in lots of things, so it's a super starting point. If you build your own blockchain, then you need to do this all on your own. So you need to make sure that you have multi-sig wallets available. You need to make sure that your coin is supported by hardware wallets. So ecosystem is also like a super important thing. So just if you have a blockchain use case, go through those properties, think if there is something missing for your use case. Maybe you need to add something, and that will really help you to find a blockchain solution. And when you know how you want to build it and you defined all those things, then the question is, which options do you have to implement the solution? And there are basically 5 options available. The first is you build your own blockchain protocol. So the good thing with that is you are really flexible. You can define everything on your own. You can define what is in a block, which data is there. You can add privacy layers on it or whatever. You can define your consensus algorithm. And there are many good examples where blockchains did that. So if you look at Stellar, for example, Stellar built an own blockchain protocol some time ago, and it is really focused on payments. And they do the payments in a very good way. They have a lot of interesting features in there. And if you think also back into 2010, 2011, you have Bitcoin and you can do transactions, but you want to have privacy, right? And that's when Monero and Zcash evolved. And it could be that you have such a use case where it definitely makes sense. IoT could be such a use case because it's like very specific. You have small data that you want to have on the blockchain. You want to really optimize it, have some compression in it, and so on. So the advantages is you're super flexible. It's a highly optimized chain. You can have your flexible mining rewards, and you have your dedicated chain for your use case. And that's especially important if you think about gas costs of public blockchains. And we will talk about that a bit later. On the disadvantages side, you have the implementation effort. So it's not just to build it, you also need to test it, and you need to secure it. And if you secure it, you need to test like different cases. You need to like spin up 5,000 nodes, remove some of them, make sure that it still works, because if you have some issues there, then you probably have an outage for a few hours or a few days, and that will not really help your project. You have an issuance effort, so you need to have your own cryptocurrency in that case, because the transaction fees, so if there is a transaction, then the users must pay a fee, because if there is no fee, then they can simply spam your network. And that means you need to issue a cryptocurrency, so you need to do all the marketing, you need to list it on an exchange, you need to do all the legal stuff, you need to build all the tools like multi-sig wallets and so on. That's basically what is included in the ecosystem. So you can't use existing tools because you build everything on your own. And yeah, I mean, there is a big ecosystem available, and you probably can't use it. That is fine for an IoT use case. If you just want to deal with data, you maybe don't need a block explorer, maybe you don't need multi-sig wallets, so that could be. And what's another disadvantage is decentralization, because you need to build up everything on your own. So maybe you have a great audience, maybe it's easy for you to reach a few thousand nodes within a few months, so that could be. But if you start, then you're alone, basically. And if you create 100 nodes, I mean, that's nice, but you control it, so that's not decentralized. If you use an existing public blockchain, then you already have a very high degree of decentralization. The second implementation option is to create an own chain, but use an existing technology. So you take the source code of Cardano, of Tezos, of Ethereum, you tweak some parameters, and you start your own chain. This will allow you to save a lot of time because you use a well-tested technology. You don't need to test everything. You don't need to make sure that it is secured and so on. But you can still modify stuff, and you still have your own blockchain. So the big advantage is implementation effort is much lower compared to building an own blockchain. You use a well-tested technology. You can rely on an ecosystem because if you take Cardano or Ethereum, it supports smart contracts, so also your chain will support smart contracts. If you have users who want to use NFTs, you can deploy it on your chain. You can define flexible incentives, so this is basically the mining rewards, and you can define it on your own. And you have a dedicated chain for your use case, so that's basically the same as what we saw before. On the disadvantages side, you still have the issuance effort, and just to make one thing clear here, the issuance can be a very good way how you finance your project. So if you want to do an ICO, and the people buy your coin, so that's very good, so you get a lot of money and you can build the stuff, but as I said, there are 20,000 coins there, so convince the people to buy yours. Decentralization is basically the same as before, so you need to build it up on your own. And I also put their ecosystem, because even if you can use existing tools, you still have to adapt stuff. So ledger integrations, for example, even if it works for Ethereum, you still need to build your own app. If you want to have multi-sig, you need to deploy something that it works. And you also need to teach the people that it is not the same, but it works in a similar way. So many people, if you tell them this is Ethereum technology, but it's just an own chain, then many people will not understand it. So these were the options where you build your own blockchain. The third option is you use an existing blockchain, and I put in there no smart contract. So many blockchains have built-in functionality, and what could be a very good use case for using an existing blockchain is you have documents, and you want to prove that this document existed at a specific point in time. So you just calculate the hash value of this document, you store it on the Bitcoin blockchain. The Bitcoin blockchain is the most decentralized, most secure blockchain. So if someone asks you in 2 years or questions if it really existed, you just go there and say, here is the hash, it was created 2 years ago, I own it, and what do you want to ask me? Another example here is Stella. Stella has a lot of built-in functionality, so you can create a token there. You have path payments where you can pay with one currency and it is exchanged into another currency. But the thing here is you are very limited because you are limited on the functionality of the blockchain. And let's just quickly go through the advantages. So the decentralization is very good because the network already exists. You have a very low implementation effort because you just use what is there. You use a well-tested technology, and you don't need to issue your own cryptocurrency, so you save a lot of time. On the disadvantages side, as I said, you have a very limited flexibility because if the chain doesn't support the functionality that you need, then you need to find another solution. Another big issue is load on chain and gas costs. So we know on Ethereum we had some like NFT action, and the result was that one transaction costed like $100, $800. And if you have a use case where you store a hash value, for example, on the blockchain, and you do it every day at the same time, and it is really important that it works at the same time, then this gas cost can somehow hit you, because maybe you have to do a transaction and it will cost you a few $1,000s. The fourth option is a smart contract-based solution. So you build smart contracts, and you have a very high flexibility because smart contracts are usually Turing complete, so you can basically build whatever you want. You rely on an existing chain, so also here you have a very high level of decentralization, but the advantage compared to the previous version is you have still a very high level of flexibility. The implementation effort is low to medium, so we know there were a lot of issues with smart contracts, especially from a security perspective, so you should really be aware what you do. You should do security audits. You should check it and make sure that it's done in the right way. But again, compared to the other options, it's much lower effort. You can rely on existing tools. So, I mean, there are block explorers and stuff available that will simply also work for you. You have the well-tested technology, and you still don't need to issue a cryptocurrency. So you can do it if you want, but you don't have to. So that's the important thing here. On the disadvantages side is you can't define the incentives. So you can implement something into the smart contract which incentivizes some people, but it will not be really decentralized that everyone can just join. So that's the big difference if you have an open network, an open blockchain, where everyone can run a validator and participate in the consensus and receive rewards. We have the same issue with gas costs. We have the same issue with the load on the chain. So you really depend on another chain, and that could influence you. The last option is a second layer solution, or a side chain, or a parachain, or a parallel chain, or however you want to call it. And these technologies are basically very different, but they have one thing in common. They rely on one main chain. And this gives you a lot of advantages because you profit from the decentralization of the main chain. But at the same time, as you build your own layer or your own side chain, you can really optimize this chain for your use case. And that's what we see with the Lightning Network of Bitcoin. So they have a second layer solution. They don't need their own cryptocurrency. It's not needed. It should be used for payments. It is super scalable, but it still relies on Bitcoin. So if the payments are settled, then you have the same security and the same decentralization as Bitcoin has. As you build your own blockchain, you still have the high flexibility to build it however you want. And depending on what it is, you potentially have no effort in issuing a cryptocurrency. If it is a sidechain, then for sure you will have your own cryptocurrency, so you still have the same thing, but you don't have to. If it's a second layer solution, then it's not. And also here we see why it's important to think about all these design considerations, because if you say, I don't want to issue my own cryptocurrency, then a sidechain is maybe not the right thing, but you can think about having a second layer solution. The disadvantages of that is very high implementation costs. So you still have to build your own chain, and even if there are SDKs available and so on, there are not many people who know how to build a second layer solution. So, and the same is for parachains, the same is for sidechains. And you need to have a very good knowledge, you need to have the developers and the people who are able to do that. Also in that case, you have to build your own tools, because if it's a second layer solution, the people want to see what is going on there. If it's a sidechain, also there, the people want to use different things like multisig wallet and so on. And the more you customized the chain, the more you build on your own, the more tools you also have to build. And then we have some technology-specific advantages and disadvantages. So we know, I mean, Polkadot, they have a very great concept with the parachains, but if you want to launch a parachain, then it costs a lot of money. So there are these auctions where you can apply and then you pay some money and then you're in. Good, so let's just quickly summarize and then let's go through those 3 use cases that I showed you in the beginning. So the first thing is, do you really need a blockchain? Is it really a blockchain use case? If so, then, I mean, do the typical software engineering stuff. So think about what you want to do, collect the use cases, think about, so just specify the stuff, right? Then go through all the design considerations. As I said, you don't need to answer everything, but it's very useful because if you know that you have this block time or that block size, you need a lot of security or decentralization is your focus, then you can also already select the right implementation option and maybe even the right blockchain framework or public blockchain that you use. And finally, we have the 5 implementation options that I just showed you. So you can build your own blockchain. You can launch your blockchain based on an existing open source technology. You can use a public chain. You can use smart contracts. And you can have the second layer, sidechain, parachain, however you want to call it. So let's come back to those 3 use cases I mentioned in the beginning. A payment token on Ethereum. So we know there are issues with gas costs. And if a user goes to a merchant and wants to pay something, then the user doesn't just need your payment token, but also Ether to pay the gas costs. Then it depends on the gas costs of the mainnet. So if Ethereum is under load, you go to the merchant, you buy a coffee, and you have to pay $20 of transaction fee. That's not super nice. What would I do in such a case if I would build a payment network? So payment is basically the main use case for blockchain. That's how Bitcoin evolved. And therefore, there is a lot of technology available. So use an existing technology, launch your own blockchain, build the tools on it. There are open source tools that you can use. So you can really start it very fast. And then you will have your payment token. And then, I mean, you need to sell it and all those stuff. So that's clear. The second use case, the BGP certificates on the blockchain. So the original idea was to implement an own blockchain for it so that it's really optimized for BGP certificates. But as I said in the beginning, you need a very high degree of decentralization. And you want to have a very high degree of security. So building your own blockchain means you need to make sure that the decentralization is reached. So in that case, I would go for a smart contract solution based on an existing blockchain that is very secure and very decentralized, but where the gas costs are not like that super fluctuating. The third use case, a metaverse company that does VR and stuff and wants to have all the NFTs and houses and landmarks on the blockchain. And the idea was to build an own blockchain for that use case. So in that case, I would say you need to think about 2 things. Do you want to have a big ecosystem, so a big community, so that the NFTs that you have there can be traded with as much people as possible? Or do you want to have your metaverse that is really like your environment and everything runs on your blockchain? If the second one is the case, then I would take an existing blockchain because your core business is not building blockchain and doing cryptography. You want to use something that works, and you just launch a blockchain on an existing technology. If you want to have lots of people, lots of interoperability and such things, then you can think about to use a public blockchain. So yeah, thanks a lot for your attention. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'm here today and tomorrow. And yeah, have a nice evening.
Thank you, Armin. Do you want to do a Q&A?
We can do a short, I don't know, the timing, it's...
Does anybody have a question in the audience? Okay, well, then I take it as a no. Thank you so much for the amazing presentation. Here's a little token of our appreciation.
Thank you very much.
Now we're going to see everyone outside. You have a question? Yes?
I didn't get very good when you said you will use an existing blockchain without smart contract. Can you elaborate? What do you mean?
Yeah, so that's the third option. And if you think about Stellar, for example, as I said, they have a lot of built-in functionality. So if you just want to have a token, for example, a security token, and it is only there to be represented on the blockchain, then you can do it with Stellar, especially if you want to transfer it a lot. And in such a case, you don't need a smart contract. And a smart contract is always like a potential security issue, so you need to secure it. And if it's built in the blockchain, then the blockchain guarantees the security. The other example that I brought is this document where you have a patent or a certificate or whatever, and you calculate a hash value and store this on the blockchain. So there is no need to build a smart contract. You just push it to the chain.
Any other questions? We still have 5 more minutes, so we can make use of it. No? Okay. Well, I'm sure they can reach out to you separately.
Sure.
Armin will be happy to answer questions. Thank you so much.